When you close your eyes in the windless deep of the night, quietly listening to your own breathing, you might think everything in this world is racing frantically along with the hands of the clock, yet the most counterintuitive and mind-boggling discovery in botany tells us that right beneath our feet, in the depths of that seemingly silent, cold, and pitch-black soil, a century-long, slow-motion breath of life is actually taking place. That if we were to slow down the flow of time 10,000 times, you would discover with tenderness that beneath the hard crust of the forest heart, a tiny acorn is silently resisting the bitter cold and loneliness in a sanctuary deep within the earth, using a near-eternal rhythm of restraint. It holds no mundane sense of urgency and needs to prove its existence to no one, yet it shatters the equilibrium of darkness and deathly stillness with a prolonged germination spanning several centuries, the slow aesthetics of plants, a century of breathing by a single seed in the deep forest. Today, it is no longer a dull chapter of ecological evolutionary theory in a textbook, but a late-night lullaby woven from fallen leaves, moss, and the scent of soil. Tonight, let us accompany the gently flickering firelight and this story you need not effortfully memorize, to walk together into its true lifetime. Throughout this century-long slow growth and vigil, all immediate gains, losses, and impetuosity will be relentlessly washed away by the immense scale of time, leaving behind only ultimate tranquility, destiny, and tenderness. The first fracture of the story occurs on an extremely cold late autumn night, where fallen leaves lay in a thick shroud. It was a sharp-featured, melancholy-eyed squirrel that, while transporting its hibernation rations, accidentally dropped a plump acorn into a crevice of the mud bed in the deepest part of this primordial forest, having just plunged into the darkness. It presented at this moment a highly restrained, rigid, and freezing posture of life. Its thick, cuticular brown shell locked away all grand blueprints of the future and vital juices inside a minuscule space only a few centimeters in size. At this stage, it was the most insignificant and easily ignored lonely existence in the entire primordial forest, liable at any moment to completely lose its vitality in the biting ground temperatures of the bitter winter. Surrounded by decaying leaves, intertwined ancient roots, and a merciless soil that never saw a single glint of sunlight, this despairing darkness and compression persisted through an entire, long winter. Yet, any great life possesses its unshakable self-choice. Inside this hard shell, that tiny heart had never truly stopped its faint pulsation. In the soil under the protection of, keenly perceive outside temperature thousands of points of 1 degree Celsius of subtleness ups and downs, with the ordinary people hard to imagine of restraint with endure, silently absorb surround soil in residual of a filament microtrace water, until the spring of the following year, when the hard ice above the forest melted, the first wisp of spring rain bearing the fragrance of moss pierced through the layers of fallen leaves, gently moistening its long-parched outer skin. Under the soaking of moisture and the continuous compression of internal vital forces, the once hard, cold shell finally cracked open in a brand new rift, exceedingly fine yet brimming with the tension of fate. Amid a dull thud, imperceptible to the naked eye, that was not a painful fracturing, but the first silent yet most resolute rebellion made by life against fate in the deep dark to seek the light. A radical, stark white and incredibly tender, broke through numerous obstacles. Taking exceedingly slow strides, it began to cast its very first anchor of destiny deeper into the uncharted depths of the soil. Once the radical struck deep roots within the earth, clouds and monsoons began weaving another millennium-old power struggle in the skies above the forest. This is a highly counterintuitive rule of forest survival. For a newborn seedling, the dense, sun-blocking canopy overhead woven from countless towering maternal trees is actually the greatest oppression and generational dilemma of its life. Those giant, ancient camphor trees and redwoods that had lived for centuries greedily monopolized 99% of the precious sunlight with their sweeping foliage, leaving the forest floor with only mottled, fleeting beams of dim light. Under such extremely harsh resource compression, this green seedling, having just broken through the soil, displayed a moving wisdom of slow aesthetics. It did not grow frantically upward blindly, nor did it choose to perish because of the cruelty of the environment. During its first 10 years, it maintained a near-static, incredibly slow frequency, pouring almost all its internal energy and survival wisdom, akin to human logic, into the subterranean world forever hidden from human eyes. Its root system extended silently through the soft humus, establishing an extraordinarily wondrous silent chemical communication network with surrounding ancient mycelia. Through these underground dark lines, it exchanged meager nutrients with other tiny plants in the forest, patching its tattered and weak body in solitude. Every onslaught of drought and every onslaught of rainstorms ravaging the surface failed to sway it in the slightest, because its decade-long endurance had already woven its roots deeply into the very core of this earth. Time completely slowed its pace here. The changing of centuries in human society manifested in the center of this deep forest. Mudbed merely as the inch-by-inch accumulation of the maternal tree's fallen leaves, resembling a refined recluse who had seen through the disillusionment of fame and wealth and weathered countless vicissitudes, it quietly adjusted its breathing frequency through every alternation of sunrise and sunset, awaiting the arrival of its critical turning point of fate with a highly restrained and introverted posture. To fully perceive this secret of life shrouded in darkness, we must stretch the scale of time to a grander dimension to witness the instant that changed its destiny forever. It was the 40th year after its drop into the soil. On a deep night filled with thunder and rain, a 300-year-old maternal tree standing directly above it, weakened by age and termite consumption, came crashing down thunderously during a violent hurricane. The fall of the massive timber kicked up monumental dust and leaves, but as the dawn of the next day quietly arrived, that once airtight green dome suddenly broke open in a grand, circular gap dozens of meters in diameter, a phenomenon romantically dubbed by ecologists as a canopy gap. Sunlight, pure and bottled up for 40 long years, poured down unreservedly, violently yet tenderly, through this rift of fate directly onto the seedling that had endured in silence for 4 decades. This was a turning point that truly transcended the survival limits of ordinary life. 40 years of vigil in the dark, solely for this moment to stand beneath the baptism of sunlight. That original calm, dim of green leaves, under photosynthesis of powerful catalytic begin outbreak out. Product storage already of life force, its main trunk begin an inch ground get rid of soil of shackles, towards that peace azure of sky launched up most firm of charge. Throughout this long upward climbing phase, it was no longer a fragile seedling that could be crushed at any moment, but transformed into a sharp-featured tree possessing its own independent tree rings and a bark covered in ancient moss. Its broad canopy began to welcome lost forest birds to perch upon its branches, and its rough bark began providing sanctuaries and castles for myriads of minuscule insects. With every breath it took, it manufactured the purest oxygen for this primordial forest, bountifully returning the energy bestowed by nature back into the ancient earth that had nurtured it. During this expansion phase spanning several decades, it learned to reach a true reconciliation with storms. Its branches swayed regularly and quietly in the wind, emitting a low rumble akin to nature's white noise, deconstructing physical growth into the most reassuring and comforting heartbeat of the forest. The most healing and decompressing aspect of plant slow aesthetics lies in its absolute fairness and eternal silence, which transcend all mundane judgments. Today in the year 2600, no matter how unimaginably high human technology has advanced, no matter how mundane anxieties cause every late night soul to toss and turn, this century-old towering timber retains an internal vital frequency that keeps its original, exceedingly slow, and highly restrained unique beat. At this very moment, in this room so quiet that only breathing can be heard, and in every corner of this building, countless wisps of faint plant essential oil molecules and pure oxygen emitted from the distant primordial forest are gently and silently penetrating the gaps in the curtains, enveloping your tense brain and smoothing your anxious heartstrings. They traveled through the atmosphere for over 100 kilometers, bearing no warmth because of the clamor of any advanced civilization, nor losing their pure clarity due to the departure of any life. They witnessed countless smooth alternations of seasons among the mountains, the melting of ice and snow, and the reproduction of all things, yet ultimately chose to shed all sharpness, morphing into a faint residual warmth of soil and pine needles to quietly envelope you and this weary world together. In the face of such a grand, robust, and eternal natural scale, all the gains and losses we cling to during the day, the anxieties, regrets, and pains that keep us awake at night, appear utterly insignificant, like a single dead leaf falling in a vast forest, fleeting in an instant. It is like a refined elder who has weathered countless vicissitudes and seen through the disillusionment of spacetime, whispering tenderly in your ear during every lonely late night at a near-static frequency of tree-ring replacement. It's alright, everything is fine, everything will pass. Through 100 years of wandering and remaining steadfast in the soil, it proves that silence and hyper-slow breathing are the most ultimate and enduring ancient healing aesthetics of this spacetime. With the passage of time, this towering oak tree, having weathered a century of wind and rain, has completely become the core backbone of this primordial forest. Its canopy has fused seamlessly with the sky, and its root system has penetrated deep into the gray rock crevices of the Earth's depths, so that no storm can ever shake it in the slightest. Over the coming centuries, its tree rings will continue to spread outward ring by ring, and its bark will become as ancient and rigid as rock, until one incredibly distant day when it will truly complete its life journey, transforming into an old fallen log covered in sponges and wild fungi, restarting the next silent miracle of reproduction belonging to the depths of the earth, the slow aesthetics of plants, a century of breathing by a single seed in the deep forest. It answers all ultimate riddles regarding the vigil of the night mentioned in the prologue. It proves that we have never been orphans accidentally appearing in the lonely night, but beautiful notes destined to emerge in this century-long symphony of the land. The world has completely quieted down. The moonlight outside the window, together with the blood circulation within your body, is weaving a most secure and reassuring dim light and shadow in your room. There is no need to ponder where the end of growth lies, nor to worry about when tomorrow's sun will rise. You only need to attune to the oldest, most regular, slow heartbeat of this universe, completely relaxing your breath. The story has gently touched down. That forest lullaby that has drifted for a century is softly echoing in your mind. Please close your eyes, and peacefully sink into this deepest, most tranquil dreamland woven for you by a single acorn.